Hello, this is Paul LaRoche, and you're listening to the Hidden Heritage Show. In the summer of 2019, just prior to the pandemic, we were invited to perform for the opening season of the outdoor Live at the Levitt concert series in Sioux Falls, a free concert series provided by the Levitt Foundation. Since we were hometown kids, we were especially excited to make the cut for the first season because most of the performers were from various cities and locations outside of the state of South Dakota, handpicked by the Levitt Scouting Committee. Most of the acts were label acts on their various national tours and headlining various events. We were honored by the local community, though, with a record attendance of over 8,000 people. The following summer, the Levitt Outdoor Concert Series was canceled due to the pandemic's restrictions with crowd gathering and social distancing. So the Levitt team produced a series called Levitt Live in Your Living Room. We were invited. I sat down to talk with the host, Vaney, Harrari, a musician himself. So the evening of June 6th, 2020, following is our discussion. I hope you enjoy it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Levitt in Your Living Room. I'm your host, Vaney Harrari, and we are so happy to have you back again. And if you are here for the first time, we appreciate you joining us. As always, we have to give love to our episode sponsors, First Premier Bank Card, and Architecture Inc., and a huge load of thanks to our season sponsor for 2020, Sanford Health. Again, these type of things couldn't be possible without the love of our sponsors and without your contributions as well. So we thank you all. But listen, this one is a good one. I'm so glad you guys tuned in for this. Now, look, yesterday was June 5th. It was 605 Day when we were celebrating South Dakota, which is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And there is no way that you can talk about South Dakota history without Native Americans and Native American culture. And there is no way you could talk about music in South Dakota and be talking about Native American culture and not be talking about this gentleman that I have here today, Paul LaRoche of Brulé, the award-winning Native American group Brulé.
Geez, Vaney, thank you for that great introduction. I don't know how to follow that up. I hope I can live up to the rest of your interview here this evening.
Stop that right now. We know better. we all know better. I mean, first of all, again, you're synonymous with the community. It's just what you guys do, and people will get to see it. It's big, it's important, it's relevant, it's real. But you guys bring them out. I mean, last year when you guys played the Levitt stage, 8,000 people. I can't even wrap my mind around it.
Well, you just have to. You always are thrilled when you see that. And then it's happened a number of times over the years to us, and just to equalize that out, though, we've had many performances over the years when there's been 6 people or 5 people
right
there. So that when you look at a long career, and you have an evening like that, all you can really say is that thank you, and it keeps you humble, and it's nice to know that your community still supports you.
Well, when you see that sea of people, right, and you see everybody out there, and there's a difference between having a lot of people see you out in the road, because a lot of times, it's hard to be a prophet in your own town. So when you leave, you're a big deal. But being where you're at, not necessarily your hometown, but being here, being home, being on that stage, seeing those people, knowing that those 8,000 folks broke every record, came to see you. What was going through your mind when that was happening?
Well, and don't think that I wasn't thinking about that from start to finish that evening, and even hours before that we got there, because I think it's probably fair to say, at least you and I think would agree on the fact that to perform for your hometown audience is one of the toughest things that you can attempt to do in the music industry. And there is a formula. It's almost like the farther away you get from home, the more things change, the more that intrigue in what you're doing gains.
Right.
So you come back home and you're kind of just the neighborhood kid, and so to kind of come back home and to be perceived as a headliner is very, very difficult. Never to be taken for granted for anybody. And so when the audience responds and everything clicks and the weather's good and it just happens, and at some point all you can really do is just say a little prayer and sit back and enjoy the evening.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't happen very often.
But you earned that audience with an amazing career, a long, illustrious career, a lot of hard work. I think when people get an opportunity to see the production, if they didn't get to see it at the Levitt, and to see the things that you do and how much work goes into that, and especially staying true to the culture, which we're going to talk about as well, it takes an immense amount of work. And so you earn that audience. But for the folks that are not familiar with you, let's take it back.
Sure.
How does Brulé come together? Tell us your story. How does that intertwine into what we know as Brulé?
Yeah, well, thanks, Vaney. I'll start at kind of the beginning of Brulé, which is like halfway through my life.
Yeah.
And there's a story before that too, but let's just go with Brulé, all right? So I was one of the Native American children who was adopted at birth. I was removed from the South Dakota's Indian reservation system, raised by two wonderful non-Native parents, and I grew up in a small Midwestern farming community not far from Sioux Falls, Worthington, Minnesota. That's where I was raised. But here's the little hook in this story that didn't mean much at the beginning, but it meant everything here in the final chapter. I was never told of my American Indian heritage. You see, back in those days, Vaney, it was taboo to openly proclaim that you had Native American descent or lineage in your family tree. Now, that's all changed these days. We all know that. Just Ancestry.com in itself is proof that everyone's looking for a little bit of connection in that culture. But back in those days, it wasn't like that. Families hid that information, buried it, and in most extreme cases, it was lost forever. So I had the best of memories as a young kid. I grew up in Worthington, graduated, met my wife, who we were high school sweethearts. And we got married shortly after high school, and life went on. But I lost both parents when I was 38 years old in 1987. Happened in the same year. My wife, who's always had a strong sense of intuition, began to go through my parents' belongings, and she found one of my adoption papers. And that triggered the whole thing. That was the catalyst for everything that's happened over the last 25 years. So she knew what to do with that information. She didn't tell me right away. We talked a little bit, and she hinted a couple things, but 5 years passed from that year. 5 years passed. That whole time, she was kind of searching and gathering information and contacting a few other family members who did know a little bit about the adoption. And so that was going on behind the scenes. So now I'm going to fast forward to 1993, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. We're living in a little apartment up in Minneapolis. The phone rings. Yeah. And my wife hands me the phone and she said, "Here you go." And so I grabbed the phone, and then on the other end of the line was a gentleman who introduced himself as my biological brother. And neither of us had known the other had existed all those years. You see, my adoption had been a secret on the reservation too, and my mother, biological, never told anybody that she had had a child. Now, my biological brother was just 1 year older 1 year younger than I was, but he's remained on the reservation. So there was always that, and we never, to this day, we don't really know everything that happened behind the whole story, but we know enough of it to be content. So we went on for 2 hours that evening, exchanged our life stories, and at the end of that conversation that evening, Vaney, here's the thing that kicked it off. He said, "Come on home." So we did, against the advice of family and friends, we went out and celebrated Thanksgiving 1993 on this little reservation in South Dakota. Started a whole new life.
That is amazing. First of all, credit to your wife. What a gift to find that and do that work.
Well, that's Kathy for you. I mean, it left to my own, I wouldn't have had the constitution to do it. And I was still in the grieving process. So if it wouldn't have been for her, none of this would be taking place, basically. Man. And left to my own, I would have never been able to see it through either.
So for you, I mean, you pick up into the cultural space later in life in terms of understanding that part of your life.
Yeah.
To crafting what, for many in the region, in terms of music, and especially in terms of both traditional, contemporary, it's almost oxymoronic. Like, you are the quintessential version of that. How do you go from that person who adopted or at least regained their culture later in that life to producing this beautiful band that is basically a cultural tapestry?
Well, I mean, that's a big question, and I don't know if I can answer it completely, but I'll tell you this much, that as a younger, you asked me earlier, but I started in music around the age of 14. the little town of Worthington didn't have much happening there, but there was little local garage bands and stuff. And my parents saw that I was interested in music and had the ability to bring home a few instruments. So I started to dabble on keyboards mostly, combo organs, and I finally had a Hammond organ and pianos, electronic things, but they always made that happen. And that allowed me to kind of continue on. We had little bands. And I grew up in the 60s. I'm kind of a product musically of I say anyway, of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. 3 great eras, 3 great generations that formed kind of the American music scene, everything from the British invasion, to the heavy metal days, through the disco era, through punk and all this. And I had a chance to experience all that and was still young enough that I liked it all and kind of phased through a lot of those different. So that was the minor league. That was my minor league. That was the years when you groomed whatever you had for musical talent. And I didn't have much. I don't really have a lot to this day. And I couldn't write a song, to save myself for anything. I mean, we tried to write original music. I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the inspiration. So what I like to say, when this journey back into Native American started to happen, a couple things took place from an artistic standpoint. It was like the floodgates opened up in terms of inspiration. Yeah. Because everything that happened now for me, it became a piece of music. Every story I heard, every elder that I had a chance to meet, every little cool place that we went to, every little ceremony that we were part of, standing on a bluff looking over the Missouri River at 8 o'clock in the evening on a summer when you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's vast prairie and a thunderstorm comes rolling across the plains. I mean, all that stuff became the inspiration for pieces of music. And so I could hardly keep up with that. And as a matter of fact, I couldn't. It just became the material that became songs. And so I've learned that, a lot of what an artist needs in his life is that inspiration. And it doesn't always come in big waves. And sometimes it doesn't come at all. So you just have to be thankful and be humble when it comes your way. Grab it.
But the country, I mean, that space will do it to you. I remember we were out doing a story, and I was on the Wild Horse Preserve.
Oh, wow.
At the time, and we were near Pearl Circle, looking over a cliff. You could see the ridges. Yeah. And, if you can't connect there, if you can't.
It ain't going to happen.
I don't know what to tell you. It's one of those things. I tell you what, I want people to get a start of what is happening right now and what we're talking about. And so because they have so much ground to cover, and there's so much that they've done in this space, we're going to give you a little bit of a compilation. So we're going to go into that piece right now, a couple pieces throughout Brulé history. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what's happening. And then even later, we're going to be talking to Nicole LaRoche, who is also a part of Brulé, and we'll learn her part in the whole thing. So check it out and learn a little bit about Brulé.
Hi, I'm Stacy Reitzman, Executive Director of Community Relations at Sanford Health. Our organization believes in giving back to the community, and now more than ever, we are proud to support Levitt at the Falls as it continues to use music to spark connections between people of all ages and all backgrounds. Music itself promotes a unique kind of healing. And as we face this difficult time of separation and heightened anxiety, I hope we can all find comfort in each cascading note. We hope you enjoy the 2020 season of Levitt at the Falls.
Yes, a special thank you to Sanford Health, our 2020 presenting sponsor. And of course, we want to thank our episode sponsors, First Premier Bank Card, and Architecture, Inc. We are back here at 11 in your living room, Paul LaRoche. Now, before we get into bring Nicole in, we're going to bring her in just a little bit after maybe one more. One of the things, because obviously people can see the cultural elements in there, they're prominent. You hold true to it. You're honoring it. It's an amazing thing. And so my question is because when I remember thinking when I saw that 8,000 people out there, I'm gonna be honest with you, I would not have thought that the record-breaking show would be a Native American show. It doesn't always feel that way sometimes, and quite honestly, it feels like sometimes Native Americans are the ignored people. And when you see the regalia and you see the colors and you see the vivid nature of it, and anybody that's familiar with what goes into the garb and all of those other type of things, not to mention how good you guys are musically, it is amazing. But what did it feel culturally knowing that those people came out to see that?
Well, I can't help but say that there was a sense of pride that came with that evening, and not for myself or for the Brulé group, but for the culture. I mean, the culture needs to take its steps and it needs to take its place up into the mainstream part of America, because we're the smallest of all the minorities, even though there are over 550 recognized tribes across the country. You bring them all together, we're still the smallest little component out there. So, but the culture has so much to offer, and I think part of the result of that particular evening, Vaney, was the fact that, and we've just carved this out over a long period of time, and what I mean by that is we learned that, to bring the culture forward in the best way that we could, we needed some components other than just music. Mm-hmm. So we began to extend that, stretch it. So the music was always there. The traditional dance we brought in about, not at the beginning, but somewhere along the way we began to work it in. But we realized that there was a fascination with that part of the culture in that mainstream audience. They didn't get a chance to see it very much. And then I realized that, well, once they knew what the dance was about, there was even a bigger appreciation for what was taking place up there. And so now we began to tell the little stories about what was happening. And when we always share our family story, just like we opened up with. So when that show becomes a heartfelt family journey that goes between two cultures, and then the music comes along, and then this beautiful dance happens, and the audience gets to finally hear what's happening. What's that story about that dance? And then there's a little educational component which hasn't really happened in the mainstream yet. It happens at powwows, but to bring it out to the world on a main stage like that is that's brand new.
Right.
And then we bring out some traditional instruments, the big traditional Native American drums. How many times do you see those on a concert stage? Not very often.
Almost never.
Yeah, and then you tie the whole thing with a conclusion at the end of the evening, and and we always do a tribute to the veterans too. We've done that every performance since we started. And when people see an Eagle dancer and hear that kind of a sound with Nicole's flute and know that's a tribute to veterans and servicemen and women, I mean, it kind of tugs the heartstrings a little bit. So you go through these ups and downs over the course of a show, and it becomes more than just a concert. It becomes something else. I don't know what really to call it. We tagged it the Native American rock opera and everything else. And it's kind of funny because I'll have people to this day ask me to describe our show in like a short sentence, and I can't really do it.
Yeah.
It's still hard for me. So I think we're still pioneering whatever this format is. But because there's multiple components to it, like I just went through, I think that audience senses that and they get a little something extra out of there. And that's why they respond like they do. And that's probably why there was a large number out that evening.
So, okay, well, with that, because like you talk about, normally people can get the education and they can see those type of things, the real intricate headdress and all of that type of stuff at powwows, right? But but sometimes it's inside baseball. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You know, a lot of the times it's going to be mostly native folks. But when you talk about putting that together, and then you talk about taking it on the road, and then you start having to consider the commerce of it, and you have to start to consider selling tickets and putting people in seats and all that other type of stuff. How do you connect the cultural relevance with the business piece of it, with the actual making of a band? Because that has to be tough, because there's really things you have to honor in order to be legitimately representing the culture.
Well, I mean, we could go on for the rest of the show on that. I'll be real careful not to get too carried away here, but that is a great exploration of the culture and the entertainment industry. But I'll tell you this, that nobody really ever knows. People just see the show on stage, or they see us at a little art show, or they hear the music. They don't really have a clue what has to happen behind the scenes. And because we are still a unknown genre of music, you can't define it because it doesn't exist. There's no Grammy Award for contemporary Native American music. It doesn't exist. We're trying to carve it out right now as we speak. It's 25 years into it. But so what I'm getting at is that we were never able to really appeal to the management people out there, you know, the big record labels. I've met enough people, you know, in the industry that were way high up, and they all were intrigued by what we were doing, but they all kind of threw their arms up and just said, you know, we're not quite sure what to do with it. And at the end of the day, most of them said, you guys are actually doing pretty good on your own. We couldn't do that for you right now.
Right.
You know, so we just began to try to, you know, do our own thing. My wife, Kathy, wears about 20 different hats. I mean, she's always been the manager. She's the booking agent. She takes care of logistics. She does hotels. She does tech writers. I mean, all that stuff is a massive amount of energy. I mean, for one show, I mean, one of our biggest shows to date was that Mount Rushmore concert that took place back in 2007. That was a huge event for us. We put it on ourselves. Nobody stepped in to present that. We presented it to the park out there, and we rehearsed it. We brought the production in. We brought the film crew in. We did everything. I mean, it was literally 4 months worth of planning to do 2 shows. Yeah. And, you know, and when at the end of those 2 nights, we were kind of hanging our head because it was a free concert. Wow. But it made such an impact because it was a concert for reconciliation of the cultures. And we didn't realize that because of the difficulty of that particular concert, that it was going to hang with us for years. And to this date, you know, here we are now, almost 13 years later after the Mount Rushmore concert. It's almost got more impact today than it did when we staged it. So it continues to go around the world. It continues to end up on public television. People talk about it. The message is resonating stronger today than ever. That message of healing and hope and reconciliation. And we just turn the TV on anytime right now and see what's going on. We don't need to go there, but I'm just saying that message seems to strike a chord that is needed in the country. It's needed in the world.
But let's go there. Let's go there because, I mean, obviously we know that in the world right now, there are a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of things, you know, there's fraying out there, right? All over the world right now. And when you talk about the ability to heal with music, and, you know, the role that Levitt plays in communities, which is building community through music.
Right.
It is one of the few things that is truly transcendent. One of the few things that truly cuts through to people and hits them in the heart and brings people together, where all the people in one space can be having a similar experience, which is interesting, given we coming, you know, as we come out of this COVID world, hopefully, right? Everyone had the same experience. Even right now, with protests and things of that nature, everyone is having a similar experience. You can't really run from it, can't really hide from it. But the best way for people to have that same experience is through music. I actually want to go right to that Rushmore video because I want people to see how I think it's just a great time for us to show that. Cool. All right, this is the Rushmore performance, Brulé. Incredible. So that one right there, we're talking 13,000 people were at that performance.
Yeah, and it just happened magically again.
You're at the base of Mount Rushmore. Okay, now you got 4 American presidents there.
Above our heads. You can't see it in the video, but you could see it when you were there.
Right. What did that do? Because, as we talk about things that mean a lot to the country, for some people in this country, indigenous peoples, African Americans, things of that nature, our experience hasn't been the same as other people. And so some of the iconic imagery doesn't mean the same.
Right.
Because it carries trauma versus the same level of pride that somebody else might feel.
Exactly.
So when somebody goes to a place like that as a Native person, there's probably trauma attached to that. You doing that performance, I would imagine, made that approachable for people, made that a place where people can connect to and start to be able to derive some pride from. Was that in your mind when you were leading up to it, and how do you feel coming out of it?
Well, months before that evening happened, months, maybe even a year ahead, we already knew what we wanted to do, and we had a mission and a name for the concert before we even really were able to put it into motion. We called it Concert for Reconciliation of the Cultures. We didn't know where it was going to be or how we were going to do it, but we had that idea in our hearts, and that's what we set out to do, and it eventually became clear to us that Mount Rushmore was going to be the place. That could have been kind of controversial even, but we had support all along the way, and it just came as we got closer to that date. We realized that there really couldn't be a more significant location than to have this little Native American group at the base of the presidents there at Mount Rushmore for us, then as cultural ambassadors, for us to reach our arms out to that audience and to everybody in a gesture of healing and reconciliation. That was the important part, because sometimes if you want that healing to take place, you have to initiate that process. Sure. And as the years have gone by, Vaney, I told the kids and Nicole and Shane and Velasquez, they all know that I'm always on that line of shaking hands and meet and greets, and I probably delivered millions of handshakes, but I like to feel that with every handshake came a little bit of that healing process. And we've tried to reach that olive branch out from our side to facilitate that.
We say that a lot, that in a relationship, it may only take one side to ruin it, but it takes at least both sides to fix it.
That's right.
And so that's awesome. I appreciate that so much. Now, one of the other prevailing concepts in terms of what you do, in terms of the Native American culture in general, is the importance of family.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of family in there, and one of which, for sure, is your daughter, who plays the flute, which is prominent in a lot of the tracking, which I love. And we're going to bring her in right now. So we're going to bring in Nicole LaRoche. She's the flutist for Brulé, and amongst other things. We'll let her explain that herself. Nicole?
I got started in music, well, one, because I grew up with a musician in the family. I, as a little girl, with my dad having studios in the house and everything, my favorite thing was to get to go in and turn on all the gear. So they have you try a couple different instruments, and flute just happened to be something that I could make a sound out of. So they're like, here it is, and then it's kind of like destiny kind of like makes itself happen at that point. I didn't necessarily think I liked the flute. I would say the music industry, I mean, it's a interesting question, because in a sense, like, we never really were a part of the music industry. We were kind of created our own little world to be a part of, so in the sense, like, yeah, like, music industry didn't really see us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nicole LaRoche, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Excellent, excellent. I know you've been there for a little bit. I don't know if you are over listening to your dad talk.
Oh, yeah.
She knows those stories, man.
Yeah, she's right. Yeah, I'm sure she knows them intimately.
Little
So,
kids, I see some of those little videos.
I mean, they're important. I mean, it's a big deal. And you, again, have been along for a lot of the ride. You started young as well, and in the family business of music. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, I started being classically trained as a youth in school because in going to a regular suburban school, it's one of the things when you're not like an athlete you can do. And I was very artistic and wanted to just kind of do, I don't know, it was something we kind of like, well, let's try music and an instrument. And they're like, here, try these instruments, and a flute I can make a sound out of. And you know, it wasn't necessarily at the time that it was good. I'm like, okay, this is like what I want to do and my dream in life. And I have much respect for people who know their direction in life, but I'm very much somebody who just kind of like what feels right and where the wind takes me, I go sometimes. And I just kind of went along with it every time, every moment of it felt right. Even though like classical and growing up in the school stuff, I didn't necessarily enjoy as much, but it was teaching me things that I didn't know I was going to appreciate later. And I just, you know, so then when this came along and my dad put the first album out, and I hadn't planned on it. I wanted to go in for writing and be a poet or something, you know, and it just was like something said, go along and do this. And I was kind of just very much like wanting to travel the world kind of hippie kind of chick back then. So it seemed right. And it just seemed like that was where I was supposed to go. And so I just went and started. That's kind of how it happened. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, you guys been doing it for a while, and like, you know, family dynamics are all over the place regardless. But being on the road in the music business, and not the music business as most people might imagine it, where, you know, you have all of the tour support and you have all of the window dressing and all of the other type of stuff. You guys are on that independent grind. And so that's a different thing altogether. As a person who's done that themselves, doing that as a family, what was that like, being on the road, putting everything together, producing things yourselves, putting it all out? What was that like, doing that together as a family?
I mean, it was definitely a challenge. It has its challenges. I mean, I know that a lot of people, a lot of people who've been with us over the years have seen the episodes that can come from having to spend majority of your life working with your family and stuff. But, you know, there's something to say that when you push through things, even when they're their hardest, or having something that can bring it together and make you realize that it can't be that bad. And every time that we would have fights or anything, and we would sometimes at shows and we would have to play, it would always go away, you know, and you wouldn't seem as bad. And I think that's when you were earlier talking about what music can do and how it can help heal people. It's doing it for us at the same time. Like, we're there to try and help other people too, but I do think that it's done it for us as well too.
Yeah. You talked about having some emotions when you saw some of those things. You know, for me, certain music in my life is disposable. I made it and then it goes away. And there are certain things that stick. And I remember where I was, what I was doing, how I was feeling, what precipitated, whatever. What are some of those for you that just stick out to you, that are those moments that remind you why you do it?
You know, I mean, when they happen, you know, they're these big moments, and then, like, you know, over time all these moments keep happening, and then you forget. But stuff like this, and looking back, you know, like Mount Rushmore was definitely, at the time, like, it happened and it was such a whirlwind, and it was like you're standing up there and you're trying to focus and you're trying to play and make it look pro, you know, all this stuff. But then it's hard to watch myself back, but like that, and like all the people that have come and gone throughout the years of Brulé, and, you know, like, it's almost like, to see it again is almost like a second chance at like getting from it what it was supposed to be. So I think Mount Rushmore, and another one that was really like I really liked, was when we got to play at the Badlands Park at like sunset, and the colors and the people, even though it wasn't like couldn't hold a lot of people, it was just something that you're in this beauty in nature, and like you can't compare. And then there's like, Indian summer that we used to do in Milwaukee, and it was like a festival grounds and everything, so it's not as cool. But then there's just like people. It would just be packed full of people, kind of like at the Levitt, and they would just, but it's outside and it's kind of like a rock show and they're cheering, and those are cool. But for me, it's like just even getting to be on stage and know like we can make those connections with people and then make them feel something, and it makes us feel something too. And I think that's what they like to be able to realize too, that they're affecting us as much as we're affecting them.
And I want to actually go to a little something with you, because you be working that flute, and I don't know I don't know many people who could get as much out of a flute, or would think of a flute being an integral piece of any type of musical stylings, but you put in some serious work on that. So I actually want to go to one of your pieces that we have here. So Nicole LaRoche, this is her playing a little bit here.
Architecture Incorporated was founded with excellence in design and service to our clients as our priorities, and no matter the times, those goals remain. Architecture Incorporated has proudly supported our community for more than 4 decades. We are happy to be able to sponsor this Levitt in Your Living Room performance, and are thankful to be part of such a strong and supportive community. From all of us at Architecture Incorporated, we hope you enjoy the performance.
Shout out to Architecture Incorporated. Also, before we get back into it, make sure to remind you that, for us to be able to bring this to you is not just out of the gracious gifts of our sponsors, but also the gifts from you. So if you feel it in your heart, please text GIVE text to Levitt. The number is 605-524-2170, 605-524-2170. Text Levitt to give. Awesome. Thank you so much. Nicole, great. Now, I have a couple questions. So first of all, I can never imagine a scenario where I would be like, man, I would watch 3 minutes of somebody play flute, but you do it somehow. Somehow you do it. And something is interesting because you play with a steel flute. I think traditionally a wooden flute would be the case. What is that about, and how do you negotiate that part of it?
When we found out about our family and going back and everything, you know, I mean, like, it's that line where, you know, you're learning about your culture and all these things. And I, you know, like, I was classically trained on the flute, but to me, it just didn't seem, even if I could learn, it didn't seem right just to go and do that just because I found out that that's part of my heritage or anything, you know. And I was like, and because we're about like reconciliation and how all these things can come together, that what made the most sense to me was taking what was already a part of me. And like with my dad, it was music and all these different kinds of styles of music, and bringing the other one together and making this culturally diverse type music, or like, you know, mixing all these different styles. And for me, it seemed to make sense to take my flute that I was trained on and kind of incorporate the heart of what is traditional flute playing. You know, like I'm not a technical, like, even like that. I was kind of like the rebel classical flute. Like I was always getting in trouble or something and not practicing enough. And I just liked the feeling of playing. So it made sense to do that freedom of like the traditional flute, where it was like, you know, you embody the wind, or, you know, you put your feeling, or if you're like when the men were courting the women, you know, it was what they wanted to give them in feeling. Like I tried to take that and put it into classical flute instead of all the precise stylings, you know, of classical flute. So that's where I meshed it together, and it made something that was unique to myself and nobody else in doing so. You know, I'm always kind of just like, I kind of just go wherever my own path goes.
No, I mean, because you play it differently, and especially when you see it with the dancers, I think, first of all, it's rare to have the flute be a forward instrument, number one. But number two, it also is one of those sounds like strings or those type of things that works so well when there's something else happening. So it's interesting because you play it forward, but it also is such a great soundtrack for the dancers and that type of thing. What thought do you put in that? Do you put any thought in that, or?
I do. I mean, like, there's times, you know, when we get with certain dancers that even been with us for a while, and because I rhythm. I just like, even when I'm playing, like, I usually have like a stereo ping pong delay going and stuff. So I like, and that's like when I play, like, I like to imagine it's just like going inside of me and like swirling around, and I'm feeling all the beats in it. So when we have dancers and we're used to it and I start seeing their moves, like I kind of start to go along with their moves as well, you know, and like, I know I've told them times that different things they do that will help cue them for different times that they're changing into some different move or something like that. And I like to be embodied in the song, as opposed to like thinking about like I'm this melody and I'm, you know, center of attention and all this stuff. I think that's what classical music taught me too, is to listen to everything as a whole and how you fit into the whole thing. So that's kind of when I close my eyes, I just kind of let the song go in, and I know where the dancers are going to be, and I know it, you know, like it's all trying to just make this, you know, it's like a prayer almost, or whatever, you know, that we do. You just internalize it and feel it and give it back whatever you can, you know, as a whole.
That is awesome. So let me ask you, Paul, because you know, obviously, I'm sure is a different perspective, you know, playing with your father and being on the road and watching you do your thing. But what is it like to watch, because you have directly your son and your daughter that play, what is it like to watch your kids do this beautiful music, be a part of this? How do you negotiate that relationship as well? But firstly, what does it feel like to you?
Well, thank you for asking me that. I'll try to I hope I can say this properly. You know, I've thought about this many times, and there are a few moments, and there's been quite a few, but there's a few moments when, as the years have gone by, for me anyway, when I'm standing on the stage there behind the keyboard section, and I look out across the stage, and the first thing I have to kind of realize is that there's 3 and sometimes 4 generations of the family right in front of your eyes. And I can think of a couple times when, and it's really hard to describe this feeling, it's really kind of a spiritual thing, I guess, but when you as a father are standing up there and everyone is doing their thing to contribute to this little piece of music that you kind of gave birth to. And you look and see your son and daughter, you know, giving 120%. And then you see your grandchildren dancing on the stage in front of them. And you see the audience's eyes. And you see my wife to the side of the stage making sure everything is going okay. And then Grandma Shirley's out in the audience. There's 4 generations of the family. And you can't really describe that feeling, Vaney. It's a wonderful feeling. I wish everybody could experience it. I'm so lucky that I've had that opportunity to.
I would lose it every
It's
night.
a humbling experience, and it kind of shakes you up a little bit. And so that's happened a lot. I don't know if I described that properly or not, but it's a big thing, and it's rare. I know it is.
No, that's a big deal. There's sometimes, you know, I'll mess up because the band will be playing so well, and I'll be so into what they're doing that I'll forget that I'm up there, and I'm just in it, and then I'm like, especially being a front man, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you remember. Imagine if and I'm a moment person. If you see the gravity of 4 generations, and keep in mind, there's something else to be said about 4 generations. Like for me, 4 generations of African Americans on the stage is rare. It's very, very, very rare, because for a lot of reasons that we don't have to get into. But seeing that would break me up every single night. I don't even know how you guys play. What was it? How about for you, Nicole? What is that like for you, experiencing all that, being that you're in the middle of it?
It's hard to explain. It's something, as much as it is for the audience, it is for us. Like it's healing, and I think that's what people kind of like are drawn to when it's not the common thing, you know. Like they know it's a reciprocal kind of cycle that we're giving and taking from people, and just be with my family and show that other people that you can work, you know. Like it's like, I think people question it, like, how do you keep working with your family and see all these things, and yet it's just like if you could see, you know, like how sometimes working through all those things can bring so many people together, you know, and just for them to realize that we push through a lot of really hard stuff to continue what we're doing. And it's just like, that can always make everything okay, you know?
Well, I'll tell you what, people want to see something that gives you the tingles a little bit. These guys did something with the symphony, and it is gorgeous. So we're going to play some of that, because I want you all to see that and just see how grand this troupe can get. So we're going to go into this one right here. You guys almost got me. You almost got me. I mean, whoa. First of all, outside of it being like a Native American Christmas show, outside of you doing the symphony orchestra there, and then I was just telling your father, the way you two are just framed there, spotlighted together, doing the thing. Take me there.
Well, sorry, I missed that.
Take me there. Take me to that moment. That's such a just beautiful moment. There's obviously a lot happening. You got a symphony orchestra there, right? You got
at the end there. You can see my hands are just going, they're shaking too. I mean, it's an interesting thing, and I can see my dad's eyes like on me, and I want to play something where I feel the symphony swelling in me, and then I'm adding to it and giving it out to the people, and people take it in, and then it's almost like I imagine feeling their feelings back, and it's such an amazing thing to be able to do this. And I know for some people performing is so different, but it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's a big ball of feelings for me, I guess.
I think that's the beautiful thing about music is it doesn't need to be explained.
Yeah.
You just gotta feel it, and people feel what they feel, and I think you can see that, and it's genuine, and I think that's naturally something when you connect it to something spiritual and what you're playing, something cultural and what you're playing, something familial and what you're playing. Like, you guys got a lot of elements that is really easy for people to tap into, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, it's hard to categorize it. Just like Nicole, I can tell, her and I, and our son as well, and Velocity, all four core music individuals here, we have a hard time trying to explain what's going on and what we feel and what's really happening. And sometimes you just got to stay quiet and let it be what it is, because you can't figure it out, really.
Absolutely. Well, we actually had a question where somebody asked us, how many family members are actually in the group or touch the stage? Now, we know there's 4 generations, but I feel like the number is going to be significant. So how many?
Well, I'll take a stab at it, but I'm going to be, and Nicole, just help me out a bit here, but this number I'm going to take a wild stab at it, because the other thing that we didn't tell you is that, in terms of the group, the matriarch of our family is Grandma Shirley, who still comes and watches as much as she can and supports us, and she comes to as many shows as she can. But so I was talking about the grandchildren and my son and daughter and Velocity, but I didn't get a chance to talk about the nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
I mean, and those, when you get into our, our cultural family members, and a lot of those other family members come from different parts of the country, not all from South Dakota, but I should mention my nephew, Chris Estes, who's been our men's traditional dancer. I'll go through down all the musicians and dancers here after a while. But when you put all the extended family in there that has participated in our show, I want to say that there's been at least 30 family members who have participated in the Brulé shows over the years. Yeah. Not all at one time, but
that's not a group. That's a family reunion.
It's kind of, if we'd ever got them all together at one time, it would be. I could never do it. That would never happen.
I mean, that's serious. You know what I mean? That's 30 people either way that have done that. Nicole, what is the gravity like to you of having that? Because there's some families that don't get to share anything, right? They just don't have anything in common or whatever. They come together for Thanksgiving and then they argue and do that whole little thing. And they have all the problems like you all have, but they don't have like this thing to share, right? They don't have a box set that they get to sit back and look at and think about all the things that they did. What does that mean to you and your family and just how you look at it?
I think that even if they don't have that, everybody has something. I think that it's pursuing, as just like what spirituality says, you're supposed to find that thing that you push through all the things that are holding you back and stuff. And like with a family, I think it's pushing through and finding whatever it is that can bring you together. And sometimes people don't figure it out, or you end up with another circle of people that become your family. But I think when anybody finds their group that is their people, you find that thing that is what brings you together. I think just as much as we have this, and it's like I still like for what we have and what it's become and what it's turned into. Like, I'm still very grateful because we had no idea. Like, it was still don't, you know, and like when it, like, we had no idea that many people were going to show up at our show. Like, I walked out and I was like, holy cow. Like, you know, like, you don't, when we do stuff in South Dakota and it's like these little tourists, like, you know, like, not, but you know, it's just smaller things. We had no idea it was going to, like, in Mount Rushmore, it was like people were coming through the woods and like, we had no idea it was going to happen. So it's, you know, I think sometimes just get very fearful, and I was always very terrified of getting on stage. And I think pushing through those things, and that's, you know, everybody always says it, but when you do, like, that really takes you places you could never imagine, you know, and whether it's your family or your own direction in your past, like, it's finding a way to push through all those things that are holding you back, or like I said, like even with spirituality, that make the negative things, you really just try to push through and bring positive things, and it brings positive things back to you. And it's all like simple, but it's very, like, I think hard because we've been so self-centered. I do think that's part of why we have such a hard time understanding people anymore, and why there's so much tension these days is we're so used to being about ourselves instead of giving to receive, you know.
I don't know that you can say it better than that. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you popping in. It has been a pleasure. Nicole LaRoche, everyone, thank you. Oh, man, that's big. That's awesome. That's awesome to have it. There's a couple things I want to touch on just before we get out of here. Guys, we're going to have to go a little bit overtime. I mean, they just have so much happening. There's just so much great history here, and I'm going to touch on some more of it. So with the permission of the audience, we're going to go a little bit longer. I feel like we got some more things to hit. So there's a couple things I want to touch on. But right now I want to play a little bit. This is you, because we don't see you just alone by yourself a ton, right? And so I want to check this out. And this is also a compilation of a few different things. So we'll check this piece out here.
Call came in from Brulé somewhere earlier today. He said you were adopted, and I'm your brother, by the way. I was startled into silence by what the stranger seemed to know. As we talked about the weather, things like wind and rain and snow. He said we're having a rainstorm, a hard-to-quote rainstorm. And brother, the weather is one thing we don't fight. When you get here, I'll teach you to read the way the clouds fall. As to these, I can tell it's gonna last into the night. I was right.
First Premier Bank Free Plus Checking gives you the freedom to bank anywhere. With online account opening, instant issue debit cards, and no unpleasant surprises. Apply online today. First Premier Bank Free Plus Checking. Member FDIC.
Yes. Awesome. That was super cool. There's a lot of things about you that go into it. And that song was about kind of the story that you were telling us.
Awesome.
And that was the source material. That was beautiful. First of all, I don't know who does your guys' like lighting and all that stuff.
You know, it's just you piece it. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And you know, we for years we wanted a better production, and we just had to take it. I mean, you look back at it. I just the amount of time that it takes to get to that point is. Nobody would do it if they knew it was going to take 25 years. But just week after week, month after month, job by job, Kathy would get an event that we'd have a little bit bigger budget, so we'd play with another production company that had a few more lights, and it's just evolved. It happened so slow, you don't even see it coming up on you.
Well, thank you. You give me hope because, you know, I see some stuff like that, and I say to myself, but I want that. And, you know, you try to work it up and try to, because you vision bigger. And,
you just chip away at that thing. You just chip away.
That's awesome. Now, listen, you there's a few things about you, and one is hidden heritage, and that was some interesting spots that were done. I want to play a little bit from one of them, just a bit about you, and then I just want to talk about it and as we think about, heritage.
Yeah. I was one of the Native American children, adopted at birth and removed from our country's Indian reservation system. I was raised in a small middle-class farming community, but was never told of my true American Indian heritage. It was still taboo back in those early days. The years passed, and in 1987 I lost both parents. While going through their personal belongings, my wife discovered my adoption papers and she began a search. 5 years later, I was reunited with my biological Lakota family, living on the lower Brulé Sioux Indian Reservation of South Dakota. I am a son of two mothers and a product of two worlds that had collided, but I have an equal amount of love and pride for both. I'm Paul LaRoche, and the stories you are about to see are an attempt to share this true American story of a hidden heritage.
Now, I was just talking about how I'm a little jealous at how great your stage setup is. You got your own TV show? I mean, what do you...
No, it's not. And it's not what you think. And once again, you have to be humble when you transform from music to television. But Patrick Gotch, who's the president of RFD TV, which is a cool network, but it's all rural America. So it's like rural America's most important network. He came to one of our shows one evening years ago in Omaha, and he saw it. He liked what he saw. He loved us, and he walked up to Kathy and I afterwards, invited us out to breakfast the next morning. He says, "How'd you like to do a TV show?" And I didn't know anything about it. I kind of felt a little bit like I was sticking my foot in my mouth, but I put my arm up and I said, "I can't refuse that offer because the culture has." What a wonderful way to bring the culture out to the world. So we had to learn as we went, but we've been producing the show for RFD TV for over 10 years. I mean, we've produced over 120 episodes, and our 8th season, 13 new episodes, season number 8 is going to happen here this year. I think they'll launch that this fall sometime. We don't know the date yet, but we'll announce it when it comes.
120. Now look, we're doing this modest production for you all, trying to bring this to you. There's other things that we produce. I just need people out there who are not in this particular industry or don't dabble in the media, like how otherworldly it is to produce 120 episodes of anything.
It's a labor of love for sure.
Of anything at all. That's amazing.
It's a lot of work, but we love it and we want it to happen. The stories need to get out there. So, and you know what? Here's something too that should be said. South Dakota, what a great place. You know, this part of the country, actually this part of the world, as we travel around, people, you can't believe the number of people that would die to be here because they want to come here. They want to be part of the West. They want to see the plains. They want to see Mount Rushmore. They want to see the reservations. And so this is a great part of the country that sometimes we take for granted. And the American Indian culture is a great resource. It's a natural resource. And so we've just tried to help facilitate bringing that out because you don't always see it sometimes in your own backyard.
No, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. One of the things I really respect about you is your stick-to-itiveness. You know, I mean, like it's hard to do the things that you all have done, period, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And if you don't believe me, try it, right? And you have milestones that you have collected, you have accolades that you've collected, all that type of stuff. All that's great. But there's just something to be said for seeing things through and getting better at a thing and developing the skills for a thing. And you start out a person who you said was, not even great at an instrument, right? Not even great at some of those things, to being, again, a cultural representation for people who are rarely heard from, even in their own land, right? Yeah. You produce these quality events, these huge events, some super well attended, and then you do 10 years of a TV show that when you got it you didn't know how to do, and now you're going on season, what is it, 8?
Man. Well, the whole thing requires somebody that will support what you're doing. All the stuff that we've just talked about, we've been looking at here and part of this program tonight. We wouldn't get from 1 to the number 2 or 2 to 3 or from 3 to 300 or 300 to 3,000, whatever steps there were along the way, if we wouldn't have been some kind of reciprocal support from one individual or a group of 10, or in the case that I'm about to say, and I'm proud to say this, we've always had the support of South Dakota and Sioux Falls and Rapid City and the Black Hills and everybody that makes up this beautiful part of the country here. And we've had more than our fair share of supporters and fans and people who have encouraged us along. And I appreciate that. And sometimes the kids do too, but I'm certain I do more than them because I grew up that first half of my life wasn't quite so glamorous. I talked about that. I mean, back that first from age 14 to 38, it was nothing but trials and tribulations, and trying to be in music was nothing but a disaster. And we're lucky the family even held together during those years. And we're trying to do cover songs by other bands, and you're doing them as good as we can, but most of the time not good enough to get the bar job. Yeah. If you got the bar job, it was $25 a night, and it was just to kind of stay at it for as long as I did is a testament to my wife Kathy for all the work that she did behind the scenes to just try to tolerate all this stuff and make it happen. But she stuck in there and hung in there all those years, and I like to think for all of us, and especially for her, that her hard work and her sacrifices really paid off when we finally went back to the reservation. Then she knew what to do, and she took the helm, and she's never let go since.
Shout out to Kathy. I haven't met you yet, but you sound pretty amazing for all that you do, that's for sure. While we're in the midst of doing shout outs, let me make sure I shout out today's episode sponsors: First Premier Bank, Premier Bank Card, and Architecture Inc. And then, of course, our 2020 presenting sponsor, Sanford Health. We appreciate you for all that you do, because again, that support is how these things happen. I talked about it last week. I'm going to try to talk about it every week. If you have an opportunity to support the arts, if you have an opportunity to support music, to support your community in any way, please do so. Young people need opportunities to be able to do this. We are so blessed as a community to now have this stage, right? This beautiful, beautiful space that people get to see. I always say that, when I was coming up, I had to spend a lot of my creative energy figuring out how to make a stage, how to find a stage, how to build a stage, how to pay for a stage, and to put something on it. And those kids that come out and get a chance to see you, all they have to do is feel the stage. It's there. They can see it, they can look at it, they can touch it, they can vision it, and all they got to do is think about what they have to do to create, to be on that stage.
Yeah, well said.
That's big. If you would like to support that mission, we would love for you to help us out. You can text Levitt to 605-524-2170. You can text Levitt to 605-524-2170. Okay, we're about to land this plane. But before we do, I want to make sure you get an opportunity to honor the rest of the group, because you got a few folks. It might take a second. So.
Thanks, and I'm going to put my glasses on because I don't want to miss. This is really important.
You still look cool. This
is important to me that every name that I'm going to go through here now, these people have played such a vital role, and for people watching I just want to remind them how big of a role that is when somebody has supported you like this list of people have it and made this whole thing possible. But first of all, I want to say thank you to the Levitt group, all you guys. Vaney and your producer back here, you guys do a great job. Nancy, Tom, and the whole gang been super wonderful to us. They've included us here. We're just hometown kids, so the fact that we were even in part of the program is a little bit of a miracle in itself, but nevertheless they did it, and it's been wonderful. So here's the Brulé core members, all right?
Yeah, let's
and
go.
We got a chance to do myself and Nicole tonight, and Nicole, of course, is always shining through, but there's really two more core members who I couldn't do this without, Nicole couldn't do it without. Of course, my son Shane and his wife Heather. Shane is our drummer now, but he started out being our guitarist, and I want to tell you, when we wanted to expand, it was just Nicole and I for a couple of years, and we wanted to build a band. We wanted the guitarist, but we really didn't know anybody, or nobody knew us well enough to say, hey, I'll come and play with you guys. So my son Shane was just at college age at that time. He was getting ready to go to his first year of college, and he said, hey, Dad, if you need a guitarist, let me practice guitar while I'm in college for this year, and let me see what I can do. He comes back, he's completely taught himself to play guitar, and he became our guitarist. So that's how the family has really done some of this stuff.
Wow.
And so Heather was one of our promoters and managers for a while. That's his wife. She played an important role. And so I'm going to talk about their two kids in just a second, but I want to mention Velocis. You've heard me mention his name. It's an unusual name. Velocis is kind of like the guy, you could never do this without him. He's been with us from the start. He saw us in a mall in Minneapolis when it was just Nicole and I playing, and we had a traditional drummer. He walked up and he was a rock and roll guy. I mean, this guy, Velocis, came from a band that was ready to launch a hit record in Minneapolis back when Prince was coming up through the ranks. And that's a big deal. If you got a record company was ready to take him up and launch him with a hit record, their lead singer got sick right before that happened, and so fate took over at that time. But he came to us. So Velazquez is a stand-up guy. He's a guitarist, and then he's been our traditional drummer. Everybody remembers Velazquez for playing drums. Now he's back on guitar because Shane's on the drums. So that group has evolved a little bit too. Nicole has always stayed on the flute. I've stayed mostly on keyboards, but those two have bounced back and forth, and it just happens that way. So there's the band members: Nicole, myself, Shane, and Velazquez. Those guys, I couldn't have never done this without their support. Our dancers, I'm going to read their names. The core dancers right now are Chris Estes. He's our men's lead dancer. Michelle Reed, she's our women's lead dancer. And then, of course, Jade Summers, Nicole's daughter, our granddaughter, she's kind of our choreographer. She's in college right now. Beautiful young woman and a tremendous dancer and artist. And she's going to go a long way. I know she's got 3 more years of college. I wish I could get her in the family business right now. But she's going to do well. Okay, so the rest of the dancers, Carlos and Sophia Benali. They're from the state here. They're our young proteges. And, man, they are absolutely wonderful. It's thrilled to work with them. So we're kind of bringing them up to the ranks, and they are going to be standout performers. Simon Washi has been with us quite a while, and Shonday Poncho. Those names even sound kind of showy. That's our core dance group. But I also want to mention Avery Summers, Haley Summers. That's Shane's 2 daughters, my other 2 granddaughters. Yeah. They've all danced on stage almost every year of their life. Both of them are on our stage as just babies in the cradle board for our holiday show. I mentioned Heather Summers, Shane's wife, and she's played an important role for us. I got to give a big shout out to Kathy myself, because her and I celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary this year. So it's Brulé 25 and Kathy and I 45.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Joe Adam is our sound engineer, and Joe and Nicole got married. So, Joe has been he's kind of been a family member all these years, but now he's officially a family member. So thanks, Joe. He's also our sound engineer, by the way. Oh, wow, okay. So that's how that works. So Joe Adam, once again, they had their wedding last weekend. Now here's a couple names that are very important, Vaney. I want to mention David Colesrud. David Colesrud is a local businessman. He's in the ag world. Him and investment partners have an operation called the Funding Farm. And they've been supporters of us for many years. They've helped us to see some of our ideas through. We built a guest ranch out in the Black Hills, and we built an outdoor amphitheater with their help. And it's there to this day, so it's there for the entire culture to share. And then they've helped us with things like that. So David Colesrud continues. Now, he's a rare individual. He's helped with Brulé. He's helped with the culture. So when I see stuff like that happen, I got to say something, because it isn't just Brulé, us kind of pulling our way along too. We do have help along the way. And so David and his partners have helped us many times over the years. His wife, shout out to her. And John Harrington has been a recent acquaintance. I met him years ago, but John Harrington is in town right now. And David Colesrud and Harrington, all these guys are working on a new movement called Farmers for Innovation. But it's not related to music per se, but it connects to the culture. Yeah. And they've kept me on board as kind of a cultural ambassador. Watch for that thing to take off. It's going to bring some wonderful things to the state of South Dakota. Farmers for Innovation. It's bringing Wall Street back to Main Street, and bringing all these things that we can keep that we've been farming out, so to speak, here to other countries. We can now do ourselves from within. We've learned that we have to do that. So those guys are doing that. And just the last couple little things here. So Farmers for Innovation, thanks to those guys. And Bill Zortman, you guys are the TV guys, but Bill Zortman has been our radio friend. Oh, yeah. And he always gives us a shout out on his airwaves.
Bill Zortman is a friend of ours as well. He's a great guy. He's a character.
Well, I went through my list of names that I had written down here. There's dozens of other names, and I just want to thank everybody. I can't get to all of them right now. We're already over, but there's literally hundreds of people who have played an important role for us over the years. And just finally here, I'm so proud of being from South Dakota. I'm proud to be part of the Native culture. I'm proud to be from Sioux Falls, and I would like to challenge this area and Sioux Falls in general to look at the Native American culture and to realize it as a resource and all the things it can do. One of my missions for the future is to work with minority communities here in this area and see if we can't bring them together through music. And what can we do when we bring them together? We can work on healing. We can work on beautiful presentations. who knows where that might go, but that's a passion of ours going into the future. We call our foundation Following the Seventh Direction. So everybody can go to our website if they want a little information on that. It's just brulerecords.com, B-R-U-L-E, records, R-E-C-O-R-D-S.com, and you can get more information. So that's it from me, Vaney. You guys have been fantastic. Thanks for everything, and we will hope that we've got a few more good years left in this year.
Oh, I'm quite sure of that. We're going to go to one here. This is when you guys were at Firekeepers, I believe. And we're going to play this one. We'll come back with a last message, and then we're out of here for tonight. So check this out, another one from Brulé. I'm not crying, you're crying. Like, you got me again. I mean, man. And first of all, just insane amounts of gorgeous.
Well, thanks.
Just beautiful. And again, we were just talking. When I think about being out at the horse reserve, excuse me, and again, being by the prayer circle, looking off, seeing the peaks and all of that, eagle flying in the sky.
Yeah.
And you have a moment where you just say to yourself, like, we can't make anything that is that beautiful, that is that pure, that is that perfect. But that was close.
Well, I think I told you too that, and I didn't set it up properly, but that piece of music is our tribute to the veterans, all veterans. And the reason I do that, Vaney, is because I tell this little story. I'll make it quick. I always say over 550 American Indian tribes, and if we brought them all together, we'd still be the smallest minority in America. But even though we're the smallest minority, we have the largest number of men and women per capita, true statistic, largest number of men and women per capita that enter the military and the armed services every single year. And that's why we put that tribute in every performance, and we've done that from the very beginning. So that's a tribute to the veterans, servicemen and women at large.
That's excellent. First of all, that's a great note that I think people may not know, but they definitely should appreciate, because, again, it is a testament to the spirit, to the warrior spirit, that people who have endured so much pain are willing to fight and die for the country still to this day at a level that is higher than anyone else. Man, that's something else. Yeah, guys, look, I personally could do this for a much longer period of time, but we got to set it down. I'm truly interested, really, as a person who pioneers in their little way in this community. It is so great to be able to sit with elders, and be able to get this type of knowledge and be able to get this type of information and heart. And I truly do appreciate you. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you guys keep up the good work. This is a format that I think you'll find that we'll just take this into the future now. We've had to learn this. Let's just keep it going, maybe on the off season. It's a great way to get to stories and things you normally couldn't do on a stage, even a night like we had at the Levitt. We can get a little bit deeper into what's going on. There's some wonderful things happening around here. Sioux Falls is a great entertainment city. The Levitt's a great new venue, and the folks are wonderful around here.
Well, if you say it, I'm not going to argue with you. But that's a shout out to the Levitt in general. But I want to take this moment to think about this piece. The Levitt Shell in Sioux Falls is part of a national network of outdoor Levitt music venues and concert sites. A coveted anchors of community life, families, friends, and neighbors of all ages and backgrounds come together on Levitt lawns through the power of free live music. Leading the program's nationwide growth is the Mortimer and Mimi Levitt Foundation. You can find out more at levitt.org. Again, when we talk about Mortimer and Mimi, and you talk about the vision of making sure people have access to music, someone who didn't have, who was able to become successful enough to provide that opportunity for other people, is the spirit that we need in this community. As we talk about what's happening in the world right now, I know this has been an interesting week for me for a lot of different reasons, a lot of emotions as we see what's happening in the world. The thing I would say to you is this: we have such a great opportunity. I believe we have a special opportunity here in South Dakota. I say that I believe the Midwest is this country's last best chance to get it right. A lot of times we're the butt of a lot of jokes because we're behind things, but I think that gives us a special opportunity, that we're in growth when we have the chance to see some of the things that are happening in different parts of the community, and we have an opportunity to correct them. We have an opportunity to develop new relationships, deeper relationships. We have an opportunity to be the beacon to the world. I think sometimes we think in South Dakota that we are not the ones meant to lead, and I disagree. I think we are the ones meant to lead in this space, and I think things like this, building community, do music, things like Brulé and what Paul is doing with his family, bringing that together, 4 generations on the stage, honoring their culture, lifting that up, and then having 8,000 people show up on the lawn to confirm that this state loves you and that they love the culture. And even though that there's still maybe some healing to do, magic can happen when music is in the room. So I thank you so much for tuning in again. Of course, we have to thank our evening sponsors, First Premier Bank Card and Architecture Inc., and of course our 2020 season presenting sponsor, Sanford Health. It's because of all of you and the gifts that you all give that we're able to present this to you, and we hope to continue to do so. We look forward to seeing you next week. Brittany Kellogg is going to be our guest next week, 7 p.m. at the Levitt Shell Sioux Falls Facebook page for the stream. Make sure you tune in. Tell a friend. Share this thing. Once you guys see it, make sure you get it out there. We want to make sure people know what we're doing here. Thank you to Paul LaRoche for coming and joining us today. We thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
We thank Nicole for joining us as well. We appreciate it. Shout out to Kathy for all that you do. You guys have a great night. Be safe. Be good. Love each other. We will see you next time. Thank you.